got some great speakers to kick off this event, which is a really exciting event. Some of you might know this, but early in my career, I was the director of undergraduate research for 6 years in North Carolina, and we founded an undergraduate research symposium, and we started the road of which this school has been on for many years of celebrating the accomplishments of our students. And it's really one of the most exciting days that we have at a university, where we gather together and we see what our students have been working on. We celebrate their successes, we give them awards for their achievements, and we come together as a community. So it's wonderful that you're back in person, that we are here together to be able to have good communication and to hear good thoughts from one another and brainstorm and ask students engaging questions as we go forward. So I just wanted to kick it off and welcome everyone to campus, our speakers. I can't wait to hear from you this morning. And then I hope you all have fun going to the sessions throughout the day and talking to our students who do amazing things. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Hillary Fouts, who's the campus MC, and she's going to introduce our speakers for today. So thank you.
Thank you, President Peters. And I just want to clarify, that's not my official title on campus. Okay, so I'm really thrilled today to introduce our first speaker, Cheyenne Height. Cheyenne is an alum of Western Oregon University and went through our Masters of Arts in Teaching program. I'm sorry, I was going to read a script here, and then I just sort of went off as I looked at you. Okay, anyway, she's an alum of our MAT program, and we're really excited to have her back. She is the curriculum specialist for the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde and a Grand Ronde tribal member. She completed her undergraduate and teaching license in 2018 from Oregon State University, where she discovered her passion for culturally responsive teaching and Native American education. Then she continued her graduate degree here at Western Oregon University. Please welcome Cheyenne.
Good morning, everyone. So as you just heard, my name is Cheyenne Height, and I was invited to speak to you all today as a Western Oregon alumni, but also as a member of our local Native American tribe, the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde, and a teacher of culturally responsive practices and curriculum. I was so honored to be invited here as a keynote speaker to celebrate all of the accomplishments of the students. Knowing that the theme for this event was looking to the future, I spent quite a bit of time considering what I wanted to share with everyone today. What message did I want to leave with them as they move towards this next stage of life? Eventually, I found myself drawn to a concept often taught to Native children and families, the concept of the 7-generation principle. It is the idea that the decisions we make today and the contributions that we make to this world are done so with the well-being of the next 7 generations in mind. My hope is that by the end of this speech, you will all begin to consider the role you play in your community and how it will continue to better this world for the next 7 generations. I was fortunate enough to be raised near my reservation and had a plethora of opportunities to participate in tribal events with my family. My grandpa served 21 years on our tribal council, starting with the year I was born. So I spent many hours sitting through council meetings and attending events at his side. While many may have assumed that I felt confident in my identity as a Native person and a tribal member, the truth was quite the opposite. As many of us do, I went through a small identity struggle in my teenage years. I found myself often worrying whether I was Native enough. Although I spent a great deal of time at my tribe, I was not a speaker of our language. I did not know our dances or our songs. And because of that, I often felt like a fraud. I struggled to see the value that I had to my tribe if I did not know these things. It was not until I spent 3 weeks in New York City during my high school years on a tribal internship that I found myself emerging from this identity struggle. One of my peers, a girl I had attended school with since preschool, also participated in this internship. I was intimidated when I found out that we would be pursuing the internship together. She was a confident speaker of our language. She danced our dances and sang our songs. In my mind, she was truly Native. At the end of this internship, we were asked to construct a presentation about the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde to share with the college students who were working at the Museum of Natural History. While my peer could answer many of the questions about our language and our lifeways, she openly admitted she knew very little about our politics and our daily operations at the tribe. topics I knew much about after spending my life hearing it discussed among my grandpa and other family members at seemingly every family gathering. It was in this moment that I realized it takes many different people in many different roles to move our tribe forward. We need individuals who are extremely knowledgeable about our language and culture, but we also need individuals who are extremely knowledgeable about our history and our politics. I realized that I had a role in my tribe, even if it looked different than I always thought it had to be. Going into my senior year of high school with newfound confidence in my role as a Native individual, I found myself inspired to fulfill that role. I already knew at this point that I had a passion for teaching, and I knew I wanted to teach about my tribal people and my tribal history. Looking at the current Native education curriculum in place at my school, I was shocked to see the discrepancies that existed. Native people were always referred to in past tense, giving off the impression that we no longer were here today. The images included in the textbook were horribly stereotypical, and the information was largely about tribes of the East Coast and the Southwest. I realized in that instant that I had never been taught about my people, the tribes of the Pacific Northwest, the tribes of Oregon, during all my years in school, and that had to change. I had many career aspirations while growing up. As many young children do, I found myself wanting to be a veterinarian, a nurse, a teacher, but never once did my parents caution me against a job. Instead, I was always asked, what do you want your contribution to the world to be? After high school, I headed off to Oregon State University with the intent to obtain my teaching license and become an elementary teacher. I felt that my role, my contribution to my community, lied in the task of teaching history through a new lens. Teaching a history that included the Native story and perspective. Then, a few years into my undergrad, I was tasked with researching culturally responsive teaching for a class project. It was a concept that I had never heard before, but was drawn to simply for the fact that it included the blending of culture and education. As I researched this topic, I found myself disheartened by the information I found. Everything I read seemed like common knowledge to me. I worried that when it came time to present to my classmates, they would be uninspired and bored by what I had to share. Boy, was I wrong. The presentation stirred a variety of questions from my peers, many of which had never even considered some of the culturally responsive practices, such as bringing family into the classroom, exposing students to music around the world, or allowing students to build on their own interests and funds of knowledge. It was at this point again that I realized I had a new role and a new contribution to my community, the ability to help our schools and classrooms become more culturally responsive. It was also during my undergrad years that I started to figure out that I potentially had another niche in the education world. While I loved spending the time to develop and write up lesson plans and draft up curriculums, this was a task that many of my peers dreaded. Although I had always envisioned myself as a classroom teacher and felt it was my role to teach history through a new lens, I now consider that my role may have shifted once again. Instead of teaching history lessons with Native infusion, what if I instead created those lessons for teachers across the state to use? This is how I found myself signing up for even more years of school. I started my graduate journey at Western Oregon University in the winter term of 2019. Through the birth of my daughter, preparations for a move to another state for my husband's schooling, and the COVID-19 pandemic, I finished my graduate program. But then what? I was now living in Montana with a newborn baby and a husband attending physician assistant school full-time. My career felt at a standstill, and I made many phone calls to my mom. Most were to ask for parenting advice, but some were to vent about my feelings of stagnation in my career. Now, please do not get me wrong. I loved my new role as a mother, and I had no doubt in my mind that it was the most important contribution that I could make to this world. But my heart knew that I still had another role to fulfill for my tribal community. Over time, the curriculum specialist position at my tribe became available. For a while, it felt too good to be true, and it was. I applied, I interviewed, and I was turned down for the job. As you can imagine, this resulted in even more phone calls to my mom. I found myself questioning my role in my community. Maybe I was not skilled enough to be creating these lessons. Maybe I did not know enough to be educating other people about my tribal history. Through all of these frantic phone calls, my mom simply kept reminding me that everything happens or does not happen for a reason. It does not mean that this is not your role. It just may mean that now is not the right time for you to fulfill it. Fortunately, a few months later, the position came open again. I questioned whether I should even apply. But I knew deep down that this was exactly what my contribution to my tribe was supposed to be. So I applied, and I interviewed, and I was offered the job. Now, I get to fulfill my role and my contribution to my tribe every single day. I get to create curriculum and lesson plans that teach others about my people and about our history. I get to help teachers create culturally responsive and appropriate spaces for the students in their classrooms. And I get to do all of this to make our world a better place for the next 7 generations. I stand before you today knowing that I would not be here without the actions of my ancestors. Long before the United States is as we know it today was developed, they were making decisions with me and my family in mind. This week, our tribal community lost one of our most influential and loved elders. Catherine Harrison was an activist and an advocate. She fought for our tribal restoration and for many pieces of our foundation that set us up into the tribal nation that we are today. And she was a leader for our tribal people throughout most of her life. On the day of her passing, our newspaper wrote an article about many of her contributions to our tribal community. And as I sat and I read through the article, and I sat and I flipped through the pictures, I found myself reminded of just how important each of our roles is. Catherine embraced her role to the fullest extent. Upon the restoration of our tribe, she aided in the making of decisions that would better our people for generations to come. And up until the day she passed, she fulfilled her role as a leader to our people. I only can hope that I can do the same. As you leave here today and continue on to the next part of your journey, I hope you will continually ask yourself, what is my role in this world? What do I want my contribution to be? Because with those 2 questions in mind, I promise you will live a life fulfilled. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cheyenne, for sharing your journey with us. That was amazing. Our next speaker is Dominique Vargas. There she is. I was looking there for you. Dominique is Western Oregon University's inaugural Executive Director of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion. She actually just began her journey here. It's almost been 1 year, in June 1st of 2022, so we're almost at your anniversary. She was most recently, before coming here, at the University of Wisconsin-Stout, where she was the inaugural Executive Director and Associate Dean of Equity, Diversity, Inclusion as well. She has worked in higher education for more than 13 years, and I'm going to let her tell you the rest of her story when she comes up. Please welcome Dominique.
As Hillary said, I'm Dominique Vargas, and I use she, her pronouns, and thank you to the Planning Committee for inviting me to join in today's events. So when I was approached about being a speaker for today's events, I actually hesitated to participate, as I often do when asked to participate in speaking engagements. Because for some reason, even though I've studied communication and taught communication classes and done all of these presentations over the course of the last basically 30 years of my life, it started way back when I was 5 years old, I still somehow doubt myself and what I can contribute to the conversation. I get nervous and honestly a little bit scared. And then I reflect on where I am in my life, who I am, how I got here, and then I choose to do it a little bit nervous and a little bit afraid. And grounded in who I am in this moment in time and what I might have to offer the community. And now, of course, I didn't learn how to do that overnight. So a few highlights about who I am that inform who I am in this space today as I share with you. I was a first-generation, low-income college student. I am Puerto Rican. As Cheyenne reflected and made me think about from her experience, I do not speak Spanish. I have spent a considerable amount of my time wondering where my place in my community is, torn between my Puerto Rican family and what I'll mention later as my adopted family. My dad was in the military, so we moved a lot when I was quite young. Then when my parents got divorced, I lived with my mom and my sister, and we moved depending on my mom's work and housing availability in South Florida. When I moved to Texas in my teen years to live with my dad, things didn't go well, but I had the opportunity to move in with my best friend's family, and that allowed me to attend high school for all 4 years in the same place. This was life-changing at the time. I had gone to 5 elementary schools and 4 junior high schools. When I started college, I wanted to pursue broadcast journalism, and I did. I followed that path to California, where I went to graduate school and began to work in the media industry. Then when I was 23 years old, my mom passed away. And this was an incredible shift in trajectory for me. It was probably the first time I really took a beat and thought about who I was, what I was doing, and how I was impacting my communities. So I quit my journalism job that was most definitely not bringing me joy. So I was working in celebrities and pop culture, all these things that you think are super fun until they are every moment of every day of your life, at least in my opinion. So I picked up and moved back to Texas and shifted gears. I was offered a position in higher education, and that's an area, as Hillary mentioned, that I've now been in for over 13 years. And while I will never say that every day in higher ed is a perfect day, I am confident that I have found the right area of work for me. So now that I've shared a little bit about me, I actually am going to ask you to share a little bit about you. Think about who you are, whether social identities, roles that you hold within your life, things you like, don't like, etc. I'm going to give you a few minutes to find a partner and share a few things that you think about when you consider the question, who am I in this space today? I've put just a few social identities and other identity-related categories on the slide to give you a starting point, but by no means are you beholden to this. The only rule for this exercise is that I ask you to listen to your partner with the intention to understand and not to interrupt your partner, even if it's interrupting with excitement. So let's get started in this activity. I'll give you all a couple minutes and we'll tell you when to switch. So pick someone sitting right next to you. I love it. There was laughter and insight, and I could feel that y'all were listening to each other. So thank you so much for participating. So we're going to come back to our partners in just a moment, but first I'm going to share just a little bit more about me and kind of put in how some of this reflective time feeds into maybe where you are now, right? So when I first started in higher education, I worked at a small school in a place that I fondly refer to as middle of nowhere, West Texas, like super tiny town that has my heart for a million years. And they were a Hispanic serving institution. And so I was 100% surrounded by Latinx culture in my daily life. It felt familiar. It felt like home. The entire community was predominantly Latinx, not just our campus. Then 4 years ago, I moved to rural Wisconsin, and I felt a void almost immediately. And I honestly didn't understand where this void came from. I mean, everywhere has community, everywhere has culture. What was I missing? So when I spent some time in reflection, I actually realized, because of the fact that I had lived in so many different places, in places like South Florida and Texas, that this was actually the first time I was in a community that was not racially and ethnically diverse. This was the first time that I had to seek out Latinx connection in my community, in terms of people, music, food, really everything. And I didn't realize how important that was to me until it was no longer a part of my everyday life. There I was in Wisconsin as this inaugural DEI professional, and I realized I was not grounded in who I was in that space and what that meant for me. Self-work is honestly a never-ending process, just like DEI is a never-ending journey. And it meant it was time for me to really start to re-engage in some self-work. So I made sure I engaged in my solo activities like running, hiking, those opportunities to provide me time to reflect. I found a counselor who was available on an as-needed basis. I developed a small support network of folks at work. And then I found a fantastic group of fellow Latinx leaders that happened to also work all over Wisconsin. So we came together. I realized that I had to seek these things out, and in order to really, truly engage in DEI work on a daily basis, that I had to take care of myself, and it was up to me to find the mechanisms to support myself in my life and in my work. So a little bit more about you. Now I'd like you to get back into your partners or small groups, and I want you to think about these questions that are on the screen. Some of them may feel uncomfortable to you, some of them may be incredibly comfortable to you. Either of those things is okay. And if for some reason you're like, nope, I don't want to share on any of these things, you can totally just listen to your partner. I invite each of you to share something about at least one of these areas with your partner from before, and I will give you all a few minutes to do that. So please hook back up with your partner and share about at least one of the items on the screen about who you are. Thank you everyone so much for taking the time to reflect and share in community with each other today. There were so many good conversations happening. I definitely felt bad about having to circle us back. But thank you for taking time to be in community with each other and in reflection. So as Hillary mentioned when she was introducing me, I am quickly coming up on my 1-year anniversary in Oregon at Western Oregon University. And as I consider this and spend some time in reflection, I recognize that I'm still working to discover who I am in this new role, in this new to me place, and I have to ask myself where I will find my true community here. And until I find myself more solidly grounded here, I know that I can find some tangible touchstones in other ways. So for one example, on occasion, I'll drive to Beaverton and make sure I eat food at Boriken. And recently I found the food cart called the Wawa in Lincoln City. Because as silly as it may seem, when I'm looking for stability in a new place, when I know that down the road I can eat bacalaitos and tostones and arroz con gandules, this is a way that's easy and tangible for me to ground myself in who I am, to remember why and how I got here. And I can take a pause and put myself first. I can center myself to continue to engage in our work in our wonderful community. It takes all of us to prioritize our mental health for ourselves and those around us, for us to prioritize diversity, equity, and inclusion in our community, and to create environments in which we all get to authentically show up as ourselves. While it is incredibly easier said than done, I still invite you to take time for reflection. Even an occasional few minutes, think about who you are in this time. Find things that ground you in that, whatever that is that's unique for you. Fill your cup before you pour into others. Give yourself the same kindness and grace and care that you give to others. And recognize that I am here and the DEI office is here as a resource for everyone. So please never hesitate to reach out, as I am always happy to join someone in their journey of self-reflection to help make sure that they are showing up for themselves and then they are better prepared to show up for others. Thank you for joining me in community today.
Thank you so much, Dominique, for sharing those reflections with us and for the opportunity to engage together. Our final presentation today will be given by Dr. Chung Van Nie, who I just had the pleasure of talking with when we were doing our reflections, so thank you. Dr. Chung Van Nie is a certified rehabilitation counselor, a licensed professional counselor in Oregon, and an associate professor of rehabilitation and mental health counseling at Western Oregon University. She holds a bachelor's degree in nursing, a master's degree in creative arts therapy, and a PhD in counselor education. I will let her tell you also more about her journey next. Thank you.
Thank you for that lovely introduction. My name is Chung Van Nie, and tying into the previous thread of grounding, Dominic mentioned grounding in our own identity. And big spoiler here, and we are grounding in the now. And then before we jump into today's focus, let's spend a few moments to reflect our history. So reflect on the past 10 years, past decade, or even just the more recent past 3 years, we all experienced COVID-19 pandemic. We still have that impact, change our lives forever. Many of us experience a tremendous loss and collective trauma. So it's not gonna be forgotten. And looking into the world, we still have so many parts of the world experience that armed conflict, escalated Ukraine war and the recent Sudan war and Afghanistan last year, that I think even though it's far away, but we still impact by all those war. Even just looking at this picture of a young boy, this young age has to fight for his belief, and perhaps that belief is freedom that we often take for granted in this country. And another significant event with a social justice movement, and it has been going on for many, many years, and highlighted during COVID-19 period, and as a member and ally of BIPOC community, and also LGBTQA I2S+ community, I think we all have that commitment to do better for our world. And then also from daily to daily operations, I think we all impacted by climate change. Last week, it was so hot. We had that historical heat waves. And this week, I feel very cold. And then last summer, we had wildfires. And 2 summers ago, we were like in Mars. The whole sky were red. And that has never happened to even just our neighborhood. And so all this instability and vulnerability really started to get us wonder, where do we go from here? And on top of that, the inflation, economic factors still make us feel the pinch. How much money we can go buy, going to the grocery stores and looking at our budget. So that's effect on every aspect of our life. So my training is in counseling, so I'm always interested in mental health. So let's look at the data from Center for Disease Control. This is the data from 2019 to 2021. And it's no surprise that the trend going up during those 3 years period. And let's zoom in on the age group of 18 and 44, because that's the age group that our students gonna be on campus. And this is the group that needed the most mental health support. And if we break down that number by race and ethnicity, so let's first look at Hispanic and Asian group. And these 2 groups have the lowest treatment rate. Does that mean they needed the less of mental health services? Or the question should be, did they get adequate mental health services? And if it's not adequate, what were the barriers? And it looks like the trend gonna continue in those 2 groups compared to white. And another group I also want to highlight is the Black, especially 2021. Why that number dropped? At the first glance, that doesn't make sense. But if we're really looking at that similarly pattern to Hispanic and Asian, that raised us a question. Why didn't we offer more mental health support to those who are in need? And why the services went to white? So I think it's a systematic, very biased in favor of predominant white group. So as a counselor education, I have so much of a responsibility to recruit the first generation of counselors. So for those of you watching this video, if you are interested, please reach out to me. I would love talking to you. because we have this tremendous need here. So I was focusing on mental health, but we also know mental health impact on so many other areas. News media is constantly talking about gun violence and due to mental health issues. And why is that? And we also know there's no way that we can compromise every aspect of our body. Mental health is connected to our physical health. For example, if we feel depressed, we probably don't feel wanting to go out to hike or do exercise, even though doctor tell us you should do more exercise. And the same thing is that if we don't have a stamina, we probably are not gonna pay attention to make an investment in our relationship. So people tend to get more isolated with mental health issues, with obesity. And then without that stamina, we may not want to be able to complete our education. And we know education is the ticket to social mobility. We know income has such a strong high correlation with education. Without that economic stability, we may not have a stable housing either. And then that shelter provides so much of a safety. And so for individuals who are houseless, gonna impact on so many different areas. And even just every single one of us, at one point of our lives, we may all experience some small scales of those instability. And this may sound so doom and gloom because the train gonna keep going. And so what do? I want to offer this quote here by the author of A Light in the Heart. I'm going to read it for you. The past is a place of a reference, not a place of residence. The past is a place of learning, not a place of living. By Roy Bennett. So knowing a little bit our history, reflect on that. Now let's look at the future. We have to have our hope. Not losing that our strength. We survived through the really historical pandemic in our generation, perhaps many generations to come. We also need to ground in our positivity. Without that, it's easy to lose who we are. And we also want to continue to build our social connection. I think a pandemic changed every aspect of our lives, including how we use our technology. We get more comfortable, and perhaps that will change how we build our social connection. But social connections is not going away. We still need that. As we look into the future, I also want to share with this quote by Mahatma Gandhi. The future depends on what we do in the present. We have to ground in the now. So, grounding in the now, my very wise colleague, Dr. Dennis Duhager, who also happened to be here, shared with me this wisdom. Connecting dots only happens when we have a clear picture of past events. These dots don't lead us into the future. So, future is not predictable. None of us have that crystal ball into the future and know what will happen. But now is our currency. So we have to recognize what we can control in the now. So there are some activities we can help us grounding in the now, including practice mindfulness and gratitude. I personally do that during the pandemic, especially extreme isolation. Every morning, waking up, thinking what I'm grateful for. I'm still practicing that, help myself to ground in the present moment. And then we also need to prioritize our own mental health and physical health. And within our control, taking actions of what we can do. For example, we can volunteer if we have some extra time, or if we have a bit of extra money that we can donate to our favorite charity. And then those type of actions is within our control. And as we end here, as we move on to the next agenda in our busy lives, I want to invite you to take a little bit risk with me today. We're going to do an experiential learning. So the topic is focusing on the now, and this is very popular, very accessible technique called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I am very privileged with all 5 senses intact, and so I have a good vision with glasses collection, and I can hear pretty well in both English and my mother tongue in Mandarin, and then also have a sense of a touch, and I can smell okay, and I can also be able to taste things okay. So for those of you who are more comfortable in different senses, feel free to modify for your own comfort. But for the demonstration, for this invitation, I like to start with the traditional one, and then I'm also going to demonstrate what this look like. So you may hear me list 5 different things that I can hear, but feel free to follow along or do as your comfort. And before we jump into this grounding activity, I'd like to invite all of you to sit comfortably, and prefer to sit just 2/3 of your chair, not completely have your back against the support. And then that will help you better ground to feel your own 5 senses. And then no arms crossed, no legs crossed. And then so your legs are fully grounded, both of your legs. And then you can follow me along, or if you want to just listen, and once you have a recording and follow along, that's perfect fine as well. And we're gonna first do a 3 deep breath. You can close your eyes as you do your deep breathing exercise, or you can just keep your eye gaze low. And here we go. Let's breathe in. Breathe out slowly. Breathe in. Breathe out. One more time in. Out. And you can slowly open your eyes as we move into 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So first, I would like you to list 5 things you can see. So for me, I can see the podium, I see the microphone, I see my own hands, 5 fingers of my left hand, and I see my Apple Watch tell me time to stand. Then 4 things I can hear, and I hear overwhelmingly loud AC fan going on in the room. But I keep hearing. I also hear a little bit wrestling, and then some people wrestling from the hallway, and some gentle steps coming in. So 3 things I can touch. I touch my podium, very smooth surface. I touch my finger with a little bit wrinkle, and I feel my face warm, a little bit sweaty. And then 2 things I can smell. First thing, I don't smell anything, and that's one of the smell. And the second thing is a little bit metallic, probably from the microphone. One thing I can taste, and I taste at my own saliva. And so that's how my 5 senses. Let's wrap up with another round of 3 deep breaths. Breathe in. Slowly breathe out. In again. In out. And then in and out. And I hope you are ready to move on to the next task and moving into the future as we ground now. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nee, for that wonderful wrap-up. I don't know if there is a better way to wrap a session than doing that mindfulness exercise. Thank you. And thank you for all of you that are here in person and for all of you who will be watching this online. I hope to see many of you throughout the day. We have sessions all day long across campus. The next session starts, for those of you who are live here with us, in 15 minutes at 10:15. There are sessions here in the WOOC. There are some in the Richard Woodcock building, RWEC. There are some in plant and earth sciences. They are all over campus, and it is in the program. So at 10:15, please go out there and listen to the amazing things that our students are doing. They have presentations in all different fields, creative arts, different research they've been involved with, lots of exciting things going on. So thank you all for being here, and this ends the plenary session.